The second hand moves like it's trying not to be noticed. It makes a small sound anyway, thin, precise, almost polite, and the room answers with quieter things. A distant drip that never lands in the same rhythm twice. The soft rasp of fabric when someone shifts their weight. The faint tick inside a wall that could be a clock, or could be something else pretending to be one. A lamp hums with a tired steadiness. The light it gives is not bright, not dim, just there, like a compromise. Shadows sit in the corners without moving, as if they've been told to wait. Someone clears his throat and then doesn't speak. A hand reaches for a cup that has gone lukewarm, lifts it, sets it down again. The ceramic touches the tabletop with a careful tap, the kind of touch made by people who don't want to add anything to the air. Fingers drum once, 3 soft beats, then stop, as if even that small habit could be misread. There's paper on the table, not scattered, not messy, arranged. Flattened with palms the way you smooth a sheet that will never be clean again. A pencil lies across the top page at a slight angle, moved and returned to the same place so often the motion has become unconscious. The eraser end is worn down, rounded like a knuckle. In the corridor beyond the door, footsteps pass, measured and unhurried. The sound fades, returns, fades again, like someone pacing a length they know by heart. Every few moments there's the gentle click of a latch somewhere, the whisper of a hinge being tested, the muted closing of something that shouldn't slam. No one mentions any of it. Someone checks his wristwatch, not to learn the time, but to confirm it hasn't changed. He turns it slightly, catches the light, watches the hands continue their slow obedience. He doesn't look relieved. He looks as if he is watching a fuse burn down in the dark. A chair creaks under a careful shift. Another person rubs his thumb along the edge of the paper, back and forth, like polishing a worry until it shines. A ring taps once against wood. Silence swallows it. The air carries a faint metallic taste. Or maybe that's imagination. The kind of taste you get when you've been holding your breath too long. Somewhere, a fan turns lazily, pushing the same air in circles. The sound is steady enough to be comforting, but it isn't. It makes the room feel sealed. A voice quiet from the far end. Any word? No one answers right away. The pause isn't dramatic, it's practiced. It's the pause of people who have asked the same question too many times and learned that answers don't come faster because you want them. Then softly, not yet, not yet. The words hang there, light as dust, and everything continues to pretend that this is normal. Waiting, listening, watching the smallest signs that might mean something. A pen cap is removed and put back on without ink ever touching the page. Someone folds a corner of a napkin and unfolds it, and folds it again, each crease sharper, cleaner, as if neatness could control what's coming. From somewhere deeper in the building, a phone rings once. It stops. No one moves. Then it rings again, 2 short bursts, and stops again, as if the line itself is uncertain. A third ring starts, and this time it is answered so quickly the receiver barely makes a sound when it's lifted. The person holding it says nothing at first, only listens. His eyes shift, not to anyone's face, but to the clock on the wall. The second hand continues its quiet labor. He swallows once. The movement is visible in his throat. He glances down at the papers, at the pencil, at the cup, at the careful arrangement of ordinary objects pretending to be harmless. Yes, he says finally, voice low. Understood. He listens again, longer this time. The room seems to lean toward him without anyone physically leaning at all. When he hangs up, the receiver returns to its cradle with the gentlest touch. Too gentle, like he's afraid of waking something. He doesn't speak immediately. Nobody asks what was said. Nobody wants to be the one to pull the shape of it into the open. Outside, if there is an outside, something heavy moves, distant and slow. A low vibration you feel more than hear. It could be machinery. It could be wind. It could be nothing at all. The clock keeps going. A breath is taken, held, released. And in that small, careful room of routine sounds and restrained hands, the waiting changes texture, like air before a storm, like the last second before a drop. Because whatever is coming has already started moving, and there are only 5 minutes left. A map covers most of the table, its edges pinned down by mugs and folders and a brass ashtray that no one has used in hours. The paper has been handled so much the folds have softened, the creases darkened by fingertips. Lines and markings sit on it with the confidence of ink, but the room around it does not share that confidence. Someone stands with both hands braced on the tabletop, leaning forward as if his weight might hold the world in place. His sleeves are rolled to the forearm. There's a faint stain at the cuff. Coffee, grease, something ordinary. He looks down without blinking, then lifts his gaze to the clock, then back down again, repeating the motion like prayer. Beyond the walls, the day is continuing in its usual ways. You can hear it if you try. A truck shifting gears somewhere in the yard. A short burst of laughter from men who have decided, for reasons that make sense only to them, that now is the moment for a joke. A distant engine settling into an idle. The occasional metallic clank of something being moved into place and not moved correctly the first time. The room smells of damp wool and cigarette smoke that clings even when no one is smoking. It smells of ink, of paper, of bodies that have been awake too long and are trying not to show it. A young runner appears at the doorway carrying a stack of messages. He pauses there, 1 foot over the threshold, 1 foot still in the corridor, as if the air inside requires permission. He steps in, hands over the papers without meeting anyone's eyes, and backs out again. His boots make no sound once he reaches the hall, as if he knows better than to announce himself. The messages are opened. Read. Put down. Opened again, as if the words might change if stared at hard enough. Somewhere along the table a man smooths his tie with 2 fingers even though it sits perfectly straight. Another checks the buttons on his coat. Small acts of maintenance, like tightening bolts on a bridge while the river rises beneath it. A clerk sits at a smaller desk near the wall, writing in a ledger with careful, formal strokes. His handwriting is beautiful in a way that feels almost inappropriate. The pen scratches the page. He pauses, blots, continues. Every so often he lifts his eyes toward the officers and then back down, as if the ledger is safer than their faces. On a shelf near the window, a radio set sits quiet, the dial glowing faintly. The operator keeps one hand near the volume knob, not turning it, just ready. The set crackles once, a brief flare of static like a spark in dry grass, and then goes still again. The operator does not react. He has learned not to. At the far side of the room, the kettle is filled and set on a small stove. Someone lights it without ceremony. The flame catches with a soft click and a faint smell of gas. The kettle begins its slow climb toward heat, toward a whistle that will arrive when it arrives, indifferent to everything else. A man with a lined face and a neatly trimmed mustache crosses to the window and peers out through the fogged glass. He wipes a small circle with the edge of his sleeve to see better. Whatever is outside remains outside. He looks for a long time, then turns away, as if the view has nothing new to offer. "Tea?" someone asks, too casually. A few nod. A few don't answer. The question hangs in the room like a final attempt at normalcy, like an offering to superstition. Make tea, and perhaps the world will follow its routine. Cups are set out, saucers, sugar that is clumped in the tin from humidity. Someone finds a spoon and stirs an empty cup, absent-mindedly. The clink of metal against ceramic steady and patient. A door opens, and a gust of cold air pushes in, carrying the smell of wet earth and fuel. A man steps through with rain beating on the brim of his cap. He removes it, shakes it once, and for a second it seems like a perfectly ordinary arrival. "Reporting," he says. His voice is neutral, respectful. He doesn't sound like a messenger of anything. He hands over a folder, salutes, waits. The folder is opened. Pages are turned with the same careful restraint as before. A finger traces a line on the paper map, stopping at a point, sliding along a route, stopping again. The motion is measured, not frantic. The room still refuses to give itself permission to panic. "Any confirmation?" the man at the table asks. The newcomer hesitates, just a fraction. It is small enough that it could be missed, but the room catches it the way dry timber catches a spark. "Not yet," he says, and then quickly adds, "We're expecting it." Expecting it. The phrase lands heavier than it should. Expectation is a kind of commitment. Expectation is how you keep moving forward without saying why. Someone laughs softly at something unrelated, an old habit of filling gaps. The laugh dies quickly, swallowed by the room's attention. The kettle hisses. The steam begins to build. The operator pours water into cups one by one, the simple sound of liquid meeting porcelain oddly loud. For a moment, everyone has something to do. Hold a cup, warm their hands, take a careful sip. The tea is too hot. It burns the tongue. The burn is honest and uncomplicated, and that almost feels like relief. A mechanic's voice rises somewhere outside, calling for a tool, asking where something was left. The reply comes back irritated, ordinary, human. Life continues, stubbornly, right up to the edge. In the corridor, boots pass again. A telephone rings in a distant office. Answered. Dismissed. A typewriter begins to clatter for 10 seconds and stops. The building is full of people doing what they always do, because stopping would mean admitting something is different. At the table, someone points to the clock. "We have time," he says, as if speaking it aloud will make it true. Another man, older, barely nods. "We'll be ready." Ready. Another word that pretends. Nobody in the room looks ready. They look contained. The radio crackles again, longer this time, then settles into a low murmur of distant voices that are too faint to understand. The operator twists the dial a fraction, then stops listening. His face stays blank. The room waits for his expression to change. It does not. Outside the window, the light has the dull, washed-out quality of a day that cannot decide if it is morning or afternoon. Clouds press low. The world feels close overhead like a ceiling. Someone opens a drawer and takes out a set of stamps, presses one onto an ink pad, and stamps a sheet of paper with an official thud. The sound is final, satisfying. A small act of authority, a reminder that procedure still exists. They keep doing the small things, marking documents, checking watches, straightening collars, refilling cups, running fingers along the same lines on the map, and under it all, there are the irregularities. Quiet, almost polite. The runner who did not meet anyone's eyes. The hesitation before not yet. The radio that keeps breathing static. The cold air that seems to slip in every time a door opens. A little sharper, a little more insistent. No one says the word for what they're waiting for. No one names the shape approaching. They just keep acting as if the next 5 minutes are like any other 5 minutes, stretching them out, filling them with routine. Because if the minutes feel normal, maybe what comes after them will too. The clock continues. The second hand advances with careful certainty. And somewhere, beyond the walls, something is already in motion that cannot be called back. The first thing to change is the sound. Not abruptly. Not enough to demand attention. Just a thinning of it, like a fabric worn too often. The background noise that has been holding the building together, the engines, the voices, the distant metal on metal, loses one layer. No one remarks on it. People rarely notice what stops, only what begins. The radio settles into a low hiss. The operator adjusts the dial again, slower this time, as if coaxing something reluctant. A voice surfaces for a second. Half a sentence, clipped, distorted, then dissolves back into static. The operator's fingers hover. He does not look up. A runner comes through the door carrying nothing. He stops, realizing this too late, then clears his throat and says, "Nothing new." He says it quickly, like an apology. No one reprimands him. No one tells him not to come back empty-handed. He leaves with the same quiet urgency he arrived with, his boots careful on the floor. At the table, the map is turned slightly, rotated a few degrees clockwise, then returned to its original position. Someone traces a route again, slower than before. Another finger joins it, tapping once at a marked point, not hard enough to crease the paper. "That doesn't align," someone murmurs. The comment is soft, almost theoretical. It floats between them without attaching to anything solid. "What doesn't?" another voice asks. The first man hesitates. He looks down again, searching for the right phrasing, the right justification. "It's probably nothing," he says instead. The phrase is accepted immediately. It settles into the room like a piece of furniture that's always been there. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling a loose sheet of metal somewhere on the roof. The sound comes and goes in uneven intervals. Each time it returns, it lasts a fraction longer. No one connects the rhythm to anything meaningful. It is filed away as weather. A clerk brings over a revised document and places it on the table. It is nearly identical to the one already there. A minor adjustment, a clarification of language, a correction of a time notation. Someone initializes the corner. The clerk retrieves the older copy and tucks it into a folder labeled neatly, methodically, as if the act of filing could resolve contradiction. The kettle is empty now. Cups sit abandoned, rings of tea darkening the wood beneath them. A spoon lies on its side, forgotten. The room has moved past the comfort of holding something warm. A man near the wall checks a small notebook he's been keeping all morning. He flips back a page, then another, comparing times. His brow furrows, not dramatically, just enough to register confusion. He presses his lips together, then closes the notebook. Clock might be off, he says to no one in particular. Someone glances at the wall clock. Someone else checks a wristwatch. A third checks the smaller clock above the door. The times differ by seconds. Nothing worth correcting. Close enough, a voice decides. The phrase closes the matter. From the yard outside, an engine starts, stalls, then starts again. The second attempt sounds rougher. A mechanic's voice rises, sharper than before, edged with frustration. "Give it a minute," another voice replies. A minute is given. Inside, a man stands and walks the length of the room, stopping at the far end where the windows are thick with condensation. He clears another small circle in the glass, peers out, then wipes it away again, as if the act itself is a habit rather than the view. When he turns back, his expression is unreadable, composed. "They're still moving," he says. "Good," someone responds, immediately. Too immediately. The man nods once and sits. The radio emits another burst of static, longer, harsher. The operator adjusts the antenna. His movements are precise, practiced. The static lessens but does not disappear. It lingers beneath everything now, a faint undercurrent, like breathing through clenched teeth. A message arrives, handwritten, the ink still slightly damp. It is read aloud, slowly. The wording is careful, conditional, filled with phrases that lean on possibility instead of certainty. "Could be delayed," the reader says. "By how long?" someone asks. The reader shrugs. Unclear. The room absorbs this without reaction. Delay is familiar. Delay is manageable. Delay is something you can sit with. A chair scrapes softly as someone shifts position. Another man adjusts the lamp, angling it away from his eyes. The light moves, and with it the shadows. A corner of the room that was previously dark is revealed to be empty. The radio crackles again. This time, the voice that emerges lasts long enough to be understood, but only partially. "Repeat," the voice says, and then breaks apart. "Repeat what?" someone mutters, but not loudly enough for it to matter. The operator twists the dial further than before. The static swells, then recedes, then swells again. He stops, listening hard. His jaw tightens slightly. "What did you get?" a man near the table asks. The operator pauses. "Hard to say," he replies. "Signal's poor." "Interference," the man suggests. "Probably," the operator agrees. "Probably." The room accepts this explanation the way it has accepted all the others. A door opens briefly, letting in another slice of cold air. A courier steps in, hands over a small package wrapped in brown paper. It is unwrapped carefully. Inside is a component. Metal, unremarkable, slightly bent at one edge. "Came like that," the courier says, defensive. The component is examined, turned, compared against a diagram. "It'll do," someone decides after a moment. The courier exhales, relieved, and leaves. A man with a sharp, precise voice begins explaining a sequence of steps. Nothing dramatic, nothing final. Just a clarification. His explanation is interrupted once, politely, by someone pointing out a minor discrepancy. They discuss it briefly, calmly. The conclusion is a compromise that satisfies no one completely, but offends no one enough to reopen the discussion. They move on. The clock ticks. The second hand passes the same mark it has passed countless times before. This time someone notices. A young officer glances at his superior, hesitates, then speaks. "Sir, if the timing is off, even slightly..." The superior raises a hand, not sharply, just enough. "We've accounted for variance," he says. "Yes, sir," the officer replies immediately. He does not finish the thought he began. The wind outside rises again. The loose metal on the roof rattles more insistently now. Someone makes a mental note to have it secured later. Later. A typewriter starts up again somewhere down the hall. The rhythm is uneven, hurried. It stops abruptly, replaced by the tearing of paper. The radio hisses. A man checks his watch, then checks it again, as if the first look might have been mistaken. He looks around, searching faces, gauging the room's temperature. He finds only restraint. "We're still within margins," someone says, reading his expression. The man nods, relieved to be told what to believe. No one mentions the way the messages have slowed. No one points out that the intervals between radio transmissions are lengthening. No one says that the engine outside sounds wrong, or that the wind feels colder, sharper. They continue to talk about adjustments, contingencies, procedures, about things that can still be changed. They ignore the things that already have. And beneath it all, the sense of movement grows. Not fast, not loud, but steady, like a train heard from far away, still invisible, still deniable but undeniably approaching. The signs are there. They simply pass through the room without being claimed. Time begins to behave differently, though no one says so out loud. The clock still moves at the same pace, the second hand still obedient, but the space between moments feels narrower, compressed, as if the room itself has drawn a shallow breath and decided not to release it yet. A chair is pulled closer to the table. Not dragged, placed. The sound is controlled, deliberate. Several men lean in now, elbows near the edges of the map without quite touching it, like gravity has increased by a fraction. The radio operator straightens in his seat. He hasn't received anything new, but his posture changes anyway. One hand stays on the dial. The other rests flat on the table, fingers splayed, grounding himself. The static deepens. It no longer flares and recedes. It settles, constant, like surf heard through walls. Voices emerge and vanish before they can be identified. Fragments arrive too late or too early to be useful. Someone murmurs, "Try again." The operator does, though he already has. Near the window, the man with the lined face checks outside once more. He does not wipe the glass this time. He looks through the distortion, accepts it. Whatever he sees, or doesn't, keeps his attention longer than before. "They're close," he says. "Close enough?" a voice asks. A pause. Not long. Just long enough. "Yes," the man replies. "Close enough." No one clarifies what they are, no one needs to. A folder is opened, then closed again without being read. Another document is slid across the table, stopped halfway, then pulled back. Someone reaches for a pencil, hesitates, and sets it down untouched. A younger officer stands at the edge of the room, weight shifting from one foot to the other. He watches the exchange of looks, the almost questions, the careful restraint. He opens his mouth once, then closes it. His jaw tightens. Across from him, a senior officer removes his glasses and cleans them slowly, breathing lightly through his nose. The lenses are already clear. He puts them back on anyway, buying time, perhaps without realizing it. "We can still adjust," someone says. The tone is practical, calm. "Within limits," another adds. A finger taps the map again, twice this time. The tapping stops abruptly, as if the sound has betrayed something. In the corridor, footsteps run briefly, then slow to a walk before reaching the door. A messenger enters, out of breath despite his attempt to appear composed. He hands over a slip of paper. It is read silently. The reader's face does not change. He folds the paper once neatly and sets it down. "That puts us inside the window," he says. No one asks which window. A voice from the far end responds, almost conversationally. "We expected that." The messenger remains standing, waiting to be dismissed. No one looks at him. Finally, someone nods, and he leaves, the door closing with a softer click than before, as if even the hinges have learned discretion. Outside, the engine noise shifts pitch. It's subtle, but it carries. Someone glances toward the sound and then back to the table. "Tell them to hold," a man says. Another shakes his head slightly. They're already set. The words settle heavily. Already set. A phrase that suggests completion without ceremony. The radio crackles sharply, louder than before. The operator stiffens. Confirm! A voice breaks through, strained. Standing by. Ask them to repeat, someone says immediately. The operator leans closer to the microphone. Say again, he transmits, voice steady. Static answers him, long, dense, uninterrupted. He tries again. The same result. A man checks his watch and exhales through his nose. We're close, he says, not looking at anyone. Another replies, close doesn't mean crossed. No one argues, no one agrees. A phone rings, short, insistent. It is answered on the first ring this time. The conversation is brief. Too brief. Yes, the man says. Understood. He hangs up and remains standing, hand still on the receiver. That was the last call, he says. Silence follows, not empty, but full, stretched tight. The room feels smaller now, as if walls have edged inward. Someone pours the remaining tea down a drain. The sound is final, unnecessary, strangely loud. The empty cup is set upside down. A pen rolls slightly on the table and is stopped with 2 fingers before it can fall. The motion is quick, instinctive, too quick. The clock ticks. A man clears his throat. If there's any objection, there is none, not spoken, not even implied. The objection, if it exists, remains unformed, trapped behind professional calm and the weight of momentum. The radio emits a low tone now, steady, almost like a heartbeat. The operator watches the dial as if it might move on its own. Outside, something shifts position. Heavy, coordinated, no longer tentative. The sound carries through the walls, no longer distant enough to ignore. A hand rests on the table, palm down, fingers spread. No one says stop. No one says go. But the space where stopping could still happen grows thinner by the second. And the window, whatever it is, does not stay open forever. It isn't announced when it happens. There is no order spoken aloud, no signal raised for all to see. Nothing that could later be pointed to and named as the moment. Instead, something small shifts its place, quietly, efficiently, and the room absorbs it without protest. A switch is turned, not sharply, not ceremonially, just a controlled motion of the hand, practiced so often it no longer feels significant. The sound it makes is almost nothing, a soft click that disappears beneath the breathing of the building. The man who turns it does not look up afterward. He checks a gauge, makes a small adjustment, and steps back half a pace, clearing space that no one steps into. At the table, someone notices the needle move. It is a minor change, the kind that would mean nothing on its own. He opens his mouth to comment, then closes it. The needle settles. He tells himself it's within tolerance. The radio's low tone steadies. The static drops away just enough to reveal a carrier signal beneath it. Thin, persistent, no longer searching. The operator feels it before he understands it. His shoulders tense. We're live, he says quietly. No one reacts the way they would have 10 minutes ago. A man checks his watch and nods once, as if confirming a suspicion, rather than learning something new. Another reaches for a document, hesitates, and leaves it where it is. The need for paperwork seems suddenly outdated. Outside, the engine that has been idling changes its rhythm. Not louder, not faster, just different, smoother, committed. A supervisor steps to the doorway and looks down the corridor. The usual movement has thinned. Fewer voices now, fewer footsteps. The building has entered a phase it recognizes, even if no one has named it. He returns to the room and closes the door. Not all the way, just enough. A message arrives through the radio, clearer than before, stripped of uncertainty. It is brief, procedural, the kind of communication that assumes everything before it has already been settled. The operator acknowledges it with a single word. Copy. That word does not echo. It does not linger. It simply exists, then passes. At the table, a man places his hand flat against the map, not pointing, not tracing, just resting there, as if feeling for warmth. He leaves it for a second too long, then withdraws it and folds his arms. Someone exhales slowly, deliberately, The way you do when bracing yourself for impact you cannot yet feel. Timing? A voice asks. The reply comes immediately. Locked. Locked. The word carries weight. It is not dramatic. It does not sound dangerous. It sounds final in a way that procedure always does. A junior officer looks around, searching faces, searching for hesitation. He finds none. He opens his mouth anyway. Sir, he begins. The senior officer turns toward him, not sharply, not angrily, just enough to be unmistakable. The junior officer stops. Noted, the senior officer says, though nothing has been said. The clock continues its work. The second hand passes a mark and keeps going. Another switch is thrown somewhere else in the building. This one is farther away. The sound doesn't reach the room, but the effect does. A subtle change in vibration underfoot, like tension being transferred from one structure to another. Outside, movement becomes coordinated. No longer preparation, no longer waiting. Execution, though no one uses that word. A man at the table adjusts his chair backward slightly, creating space between himself and the map. The gesture is unconscious, as if instinct already understands that distance will not help. The radio emits a short tone, a confirmation signal. It is acknowledged immediately. No discussion follows. Someone gathers loose papers into a neat stack and sets them aside, out of the way. They will not be needed now. A phone rings once. No one answers it. The ringing stops on its own. Silence returns, but it is a different silence now. Heavier, compressed. The kind that follows a door closing behind you when you didn't realize you were stepping through it. The point where reversal was possible does not announce itself as it passes. It simply slips behind them, unnoticed, unmarked, like a shoreline disappearing in fog. And from this moment forward, everything that happens will happen because of what has already been set in motion. Nothing moves now unless it has to. The room has gone still in a way that feels deliberate, as if motion itself has been suspended by agreement. Chairs remain where they were last adjusted. Hands rest where they fell, on tabletops, on armrests against fabric. No one fidgets. No one checks the clock anymore. The clock continues without witnesses. Breathing is shallow, controlled. You can hear it if you listen closely. The collective restraint of men who have learned how much sound a body can make without meaning to. Someone inhales through the nose, slow and quiet. Someone else exhales through pursed lips, barely audible. The radio remains on. It does not speak. Its steady tone fills the room like a held note, neither rising nor falling. The operator sits perfectly still, headset resting against his jaw, eyes fixed on the dial. He does not adjust it. There is nothing left to tune. Outside, the wind eases. The loose metal on the roof no longer rattles. The sudden absence of that sound feels unnatural, like a question cut off mid-sentence. A man near the window places his palm against the glass, not to see, not to signal, just to feel the cold through it. He keeps it there for a moment, then lowers his hand and rubs it against his coat, warming it. The gesture is small, human, out of place. Someone clears his throat and immediately regrets it. The sound feels too loud. He lowers his head slightly, as if apologizing to the room. The lights hum. The map remains on the table, unchanged, its lines and symbols frozen in a version of reality that already feels slightly outdated. No one looks at it now. Its usefulness has passed, though it has not been removed. In the corridor beyond the door, there are no footsteps. The building seems to be holding its breath. A phone sits on a side table, receiver perfectly aligned. It does not ring. The absence of ringing stretches longer than expected, long enough for someone to glance at it and then look away again, as if eye contact might provoke it. A man shifts his weight once, carefully redistributing it, then settles again. Another closes his eyes for a second, not in rest, not in prayer, just a brief withdrawal, a reflex. The radio emits a single click. Everyone hears it. The operator straightens by a fraction, fingers twitching, then stills again. The click does not repeat. It is followed by nothing. The tone resumes its steady presence, unchanged. Outside, something large finishes moving into position. There is no noise to announce it, only the sense of completion, the way the air seems to accept that whatever needed to be aligned has been aligned. A watch ticks softly on someone's wrist. The sound is irregular now, or perhaps it always was, and no one noticed until this moment. He turns his arm slightly, listening, then lowers it again. Unsatisfied. No one speaks. Words would only describe what everyone already feels, and description would make it too real. A faint vibration travels through the floor, so light it could be imagined. It passes and does not return. No one comments on it. No one wants to be the one who gives it meaning. The operator's breathing slows. He adjusts the headset against his ear without lifting his hands, a minimal movement learned over years. He waits. The clock reaches a minute marker. It passes it. Another minute begins. Somewhere far beyond the walls, far enough to be abstract, close enough to matter, systems continue their sequences. Timers count down without faces watching them. Mechanisms obey the logic they were built with. Nothing hesitates. Inside the room, a man places both feet flat on the floor and straightens his back. The movement is instinctive, the way you sit when turbulence begins before the seatbelt sign comes on. Another man loosens his collar slightly, then stops, leaving it half adjusted. He drops his hand, realizing there is no comfort to be found there. The radio tone deepens by a fraction, not louder, not clearer, just more present. The operator swallows. No transmission arrives, no warning, no final confirmation, only waiting. Time stretches again, thin and elastic. Seconds feel longer than they should, yet move too fast to be counted. The space between one breath and the next grows heavy, deliberate. The clock keeps working. The building remains intact. The room holds. Everything is poised exactly where it is meant to be. Balanced, committed, irreversible. And somewhere, just beyond perception, history is leaning forward. The moment before impact does not announce itself. It simply waits,